These are people, as Joe Biden said, that are just as much Americans as you or I, except they don't have a piece of paper. They call them dreamers. They call them anything except illegal. And in fact, when we received this startling new report out from the Center for Immigration Studies, it's not an opinion. These are facts. From drunk or drug driving to rape to aggravated assault, trafficking in illegal drugs, of course, carjackings, kidnappings, homicides, 36,000 criminals released in 2013. Of those 36,000 people who were released pending trial, 88,000 total convictions. Okay? The vast majority of these releases were done on a so-called discretionary basis. And we are about to hear from Barack Obama in the next several weeks about how the Homeland Security Department is going to further relax deportations and clarify the rules on deportations, meaning they're basically going to deport nobody. Maybe if you've murdered someone after you're in jail here for a couple of years, maybe they'll deport you back to MS-13 El Salvador. Okay, maybe. Other than that, though, forget it. You're not going to get deported. Joining us now, Jessica Vaughn from the Center for Immigration Studies. She just issued this report, and she joins us now. Jessica, I'd like to say I was surprised about this figure, which I think to regular folks who don't get this information from the traditional media, most folks would be surprised because they have this crazy idea that the U.S. government is supposed to be working for them to protect them. But this is a real security question, in addition to the rule of law being compromised, international sovereignty, and it is an utter travesty.
It is, you're right. And even I was surprised. We knew that some criminals were, getting deferred action and, being let out with ankle bracelets and so on. But I was surprised at the number and also the number of very serious and violent crimes that these people had committed. I mean, if ICE can't find a way to keep murderers and rapists and armed robbers in their custody, who are they keeping in their custody? And you remember a few weeks back we talked about another report that I put out that showed that 68,000 cases of criminals who were released by ICE, that ICE walked away from those cases and decided that they weren't going to try to deport them. These are the people that they are trying to deport, but they don't think it's necessary to hold them in custody while they work their way through the courts.
Yeah, that works out really well. So you release them on their own recognizance because these individuals have already demonstrated they're so worthy of our public trust.
This is what they call smarter, more effective immigration enforcement, in the words of the Obama administration's top immigration enforcement people. So, yeah, and the concept, and they have not been asked to notify local law enforcement agencies or the victims of these crimes. This is all done completely under the radar, and it's going to have obvious public safety impacts in our communities. And one just has to wonder, going forward, who, as you asked, who is going to be deported?
Well, and in fact, what we know is that Homeland Security, with the president's nod, is set to release new guidelines for deportation procedures and further limiting deportations in the United States. I mean, as you have documented, the percentage of people who are found to be in the country illegally who are actually deported in the interior of our country versus a turn back at the border, what is it, 2%? I mean, it's a tiny number as it is.
That's right. And this shows that this administration is more concerned about the pressure it is getting from the immigrant advocacy groups than it is about protecting American communities and having an immigration system with some integrity. Because no matter what you think about what our legal immigration policy should be, if we can't even manage to enforce the rules against the most egregious, worst of the worst criminals, then we're in big trouble. How is any legal system going to have any integrity whatsoever?
Well, in fact, when you look into this, what the activist groups who are the open borders groups, they basically believe when you put them under some sodium pentothal, they would actually tell you that there shouldn't be borders at all, right? That the United States should just be folded into Mexico and it should all be one territory, and that borders themselves are discriminatory and illegal. So that's what they really believe. Let's just get that out there so people understand that. But what they're also doing is they're turning this issue of criminality, and I'm talking violent crime, repeated DUIs, running down people and killing them in vehicles and so forth, rape, sexual assaults against children. They're turning that issue into a positive for the undocumented by doing reports on, well, do you know there's a lot of sexual assaults in the immigration holding cells, that in fact these people shouldn't even be held because there's so much abuse within the immigration system. In other words, it's the immigration officers that are the problem.
Right, when most often, it's going to turn out to have been one of the detainees, and yet, they're under so much pressure from these advocacy groups to make these detention centers like a boarding school or something instead of. But yeah, and I'm sure that many of these releases that were enumerated in the document that ICE prepared were released specifically because the agency got petitions on behalf of these individuals, and there were protests at these detention centers, people chaining themselves to fences and lying down in front of buses headed back to the border, that, they say, well, these people have families, therefore they must be released. But what is never told to the public is that these people with families also have many criminal convictions, and that's why they're being deported. So, the administration is letting political considerations, its desire to please these grievance groups, trump public safety, and that's a big problem.
Well, and again, the family unification argument. If we had more than 2 Republicans on Capitol Hill who were not cowed by the open borders groups in the Chamber of Commerce, I would say we would have a Republican or maybe a law and order pro-sovereignty Democrat say, let's talk about how the American family has been affected by illegal immigration, how they've been brutalized in some cases by the criminality, how they've been undercut in wage earning capacity because of illegal immigration, how their schools have been turned upside down by the number of people for whom English is a second language. Let's talk about the American family and the families of legal immigrants who've had to put up with this nonsense. But we have very few honest politicians on Capitol Hill who will call out these complete, these cockamamie excuses for illegal immigration. You have to keep the families unified. Well, apparently the illegal immigrants didn't care about their families enough to actually abide by the law and not risk their family being separated by being here.
That's right. This is, a choice that they're making to be here.
It's not our fault they're here. It's their decision to come here illegally. They have to pay the price.
A couple weeks ago, I was on the National Mall in Washington with a group of families who have been separated from their family members because they were killed by illegal aliens. And we were on the mall. Wow. There was an illegal alien giving a talk. This was a rally trying to pressure Congress to move on immigration reform. And she said, I'm here illegally, so I can't go back home to my grandmother's funeral. And, that's sad, but that's her choice. And so as she was speaking, this other group unfurled this banner with the pictures of Americans who've been killed by illegal aliens. And it was amazing to watch the TV cameras move from the stage to this very powerful banner, and they just stood there, and then people started to come over and say, gosh, what's this all about? And they said, well, these are the families that no one is thinking about in this debate, the Americans.
Yeah, Jessica, I don't even see that was covered anywhere.
No, I don't think it was. There were some cameras there, but nobody's talking about it.
Well, I would say the uncomfortable truths that are kept from the public in order to ram through a, quote, comprehensive solution to all of this. The ultimate truths are kept from the American people. And it's called the Remembrance Project. And we've actually had representatives of the group on this show. But look, until one of your family members is grievously injured by an illegal alien here in the United States, and I guess it's just somebody else's problem for the elites. I want to play a soundbite for you, Jessica, from Jeb Bush. This was a fairly recent comment from him about the illegal immigration issue. Let's listen.
Everything doesn't have to have a deep political motive. It could be that actually people think that our country can grow and that immigrants can play a huge part of that. They're more entrepreneurial. They set up more businesses. They buy more homes. They're more family oriented.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about illegal immigrants, or is it just, I mean, to me, that's the kind of meaningless rhetoric we hear from Republicans. In other words, Americans
it's actually
worse.
Incorrect.
Well, go ahead.
We've done studies showing that immigrants are no more entrepreneurial than Americans are. I mean, sure, there are some who start business. There are lots of Americans who start businesses as well. But is the the taco wagon on the corner as meaningful to our economy as lots of other businesses that people start? I mean, it's just it really it's not correct what he said. In fact, the facts are not borne out by the data, or excuse me, his statement's not borne out by the data. But again, obviously crime is not a job Americans won't do, so there's no reason for us to allow people to stay here who have committed these serious crimes that have occurred, and where not just Americans but also legal immigrants get hurt by it. Even illegal immigrants are often the ones who are preyed upon by these people. So we can't use these these kind of romanticizing of the immigration flow that we're getting now.
And the illegal immigrant flow, Jessica, what we know is there are a lot of people out there who send their kids to private schools and who are never affected by illegal immigration. They live in their little protected worlds, and for them it's like, well, we maybe get a cheap painter, or we maybe get someone who's a nice person who cuts our lawn, and it's fine for us, right? But their lives are never affected by it. And a lot of these people are politicians who get big contributions from groups like the Chamber of Commerce or American Crossroads, and these organizations are hell-bent on upending American sovereignty and pushing through this so-called solution to our, quote, immigration problem in this country. And I would say in response to Jeb Bush, when he said these people are basically better than American citizens, that's what I think, to me it seems like that's what he always says. They're better, they're more family-oriented, they're more business-oriented. Percentage of births that are out of wedlock for each ethnic group, this is a federal government report. Hispanics, 53.5% of Hispanic children today are born out of wedlock. 17% of Pacific Islanders, 29% of white kids are non-Hispanic whites. So that's, I mean, so Jeb Bush can say everything he wants about this, but again, unless he has a Republican of big, of decent stature who's going to stand up and call him out on this, I mean, he's just going to continue to say these things and go unchecked.
Right. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a state trooper in Virginia who was the head of a gang unit, and he said, everybody loves these people during the day when they're doing their landscaping or they're working in restaurants. He said, it's at night when they become my problem.
No.
Because, and nobody ever wants to talk about that. There's no such thing as cheap labor because we all end up paying for it, whether it's through the criminal justice system or through our taxes, when we have to provide the public services because their employers are not willing to spend enough money on their labor to allow someone to support themselves. I mean, it all comes back on the taxpayer ultimately.
And Jessica, before we let you go, has any ranking Republican acknowledged your study or referenced it or tweeted it or Facebooked it?
Yes, the House Judiciary Committee sent out a response asking for more information from DHS and essentially expressing outrage. Also, Congressman Lamar Smith from Texas sent out a response.
Nothing from Speaker Boehner's office, who cares so much about the immigration issue. Nothing from Cantor's office. Nothing there.
No, not about how this fits in with their principles for immigration reform. No, nothing.
Yeah, nothing from Jeb. But Jeb Bush hasn't retweeted your study. Yeah, Tom Donahue isn't really concerned about this stuff. Yeah, of course not. Hey, Jessica.